All righty then. I think as the last sort of flood of participants make their way in, I think this is probably a good time to start. So firstly, thank you very much for attending, all of those who took a little bit of time out of their day, which is a lovely day where I am in the world at the minute. The purpose of today's event really is to share a bit of information, have a bit of an open discussion around service management and ServiceNow, and look a bit to how you can help and support transfer and form a legacy tool set into the likes of ServiceNow and some of the lessons we learned along the way, which Jeremy aptly calls a journey to the cake. Housekeeping wise, the session will be recorded, just so we're all aware. There'll be plenty of time for questions, and in fact, I'd encourage questions throughout of this meeting to help steer that conversation in the route that best suits you and that you're going to get the most value out of. We'll also have a little bit more time at the end for questions, but do keep them firing throughout the session. In terms of my introduction, my name is Murray Atchison. I am the Health and Life Sciences Lead at Engage ESM, which is the Centre of Excellence for ServiceNow within Atos. Joining me live from across the UK in various locations, we have Chris, Jeremy and Andy. Chris Pope, who is the Global VP for Innovation and Strategy at ServiceNow, has a wealth of experience working with large organisations globally, as well as he's also a published author and contributed to many leading digital publication and blogs, both in and out of ServiceNow. Joining him, we have one of our ServiceNow customers, Jeremy Cooper, a Senior IT Director of Operations at Charles River Laboratories, who provides services to help expedite discovery, early stage development, and safe manufacture of novel drugs and therapeutics. Finally, we'll be joined by Andy Corkill, the VP of Energy and Utilities within the wider Atos practice and the Atos business, who's a passionate champion for service quality and innovation, and how important it is not to forget those internal customers whilst focusing on that external customer in the end. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andy for a first little session to talk a little bit around what I've just explained. And then I'll go over to Chris and Jeremy for that open discussion, really, in terms of their journey and what they've experienced along the way. But as mentioned, please do fire questions back across throughout, and I will ask the team as we progress. So Andy Corkill, please.
Thanks very much, Murray. Welcome, everybody. Just a few words from me, really. Atos, as you know, has a long track record of delivering service improvement projects for our clients. From my perspective, I implemented my first service improvement program almost 31 years ago. I know it's pretty hard to sort of imagine that I'm that old, but yeah, 31 years ago, using the very first iteration of the ITIL framework. I was responsible for putting the whole new service improvement process in place for a large retailer servicing some 800 stores with over 30,000 users across the UK. Just wanted to share with you really a couple of pointers from those days, and then really the sort of 12-14 years after that when I was involved in service delivery. And the one thing that struck me with these service improvement programs over and over again was that the actual objective was all around improving the service to the users, so the internal customer. But really, what I often saw happening was the transfer of work and effort from the central function to the end customer, to the end user. And that was viewed as being a really efficient way of doing things. So rather than having a central pool of people who were dedicated to run the services and were dedicated to understand how the systems worked, what all the different parameters were, etc., it was deemed it was far better to go out and train all of your users in this wonderful new system that would be very complex and complicated for them to use. And it was all done on the back of self-empowerment. So by doing this, we'll use technology to help you self-empower, to help you self-serve, and therefore your problems will be fixed faster and you'll have a better experience. But again, in my experience, what it actually did was it just created frustration amongst the organization, 30 years ago, we weren't very good at doing these service improvement programs. We didn't really treat them as a sort of like cultural change program or a change program. So we didn't put the effort we would put into now into working with the clients, end clients, end users, to make sure that what we were designing and putting in place was actually what they wanted to have. Okay. So we'd end up with a situation where we'd do the service improvement program, and straight away we would be running our SLAs and we'd be saying everything's green, everything's fantastic. Look, service volumes are down, number of problems and issues are down. Again, in my experience, based on the early days, part of the reason for that was we'd actually put in place a relatively complicated system with a lot of parameters, a lot of things for the end users to try to understand. We hadn't put the training in behind, so effectively they didn't use the system. And that's why the SLAs were green, because nobody was actually reporting any problems, and our volumes of problems had actually gone down significantly. Again, because rather than using the system, everybody was going to James at the corner of the office because he knew what he was doing and he would fix the problems. The other problem we found was that the actual complexity around the user input, if you like, and the classification of all the data was driven by the support function's desire to show how good the implementation was and how good the service improvement was, because the more parameters they had, the more reports they could run, the more data points they could collect, and therefore it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the purpose of this part of the talk is not really to say we're all doomed and damned because we're going to get it wrong. It's to say we need to learn the lessons of the past. We've got some wonderful tools now. Things like the ServiceNow platform is very flexible, much more intuitive than the tools of the past. But for me, to really get the benefit of the tool and to get the flexibility and the benefit into the end customer, you've got to put the effort into understanding how you configure that for them, so it makes it easy for them to put the data in, and actually think about how simple can you make it for them to quickly get the core data in that they need, so they can get the problem logged, they can get the problem resolved, so they can then focus on delivering the outcomes for their business, and leave the complexity in the reporting to the people who are actually resolving the issues in the resolver groups. So rather than put that burden onto the front end, if you like, onto the client, leave that for the back end, because actually you'll get better quality data and better quality reporting, because the people who are resolving the problem will be making sure it's classified correctly. So that was really just a couple of snippets, if you like. 30 years ago, everything's changed, but everything's still the same, just the technology's moved on. I'm very much looking forward to this session. I hope you are too, and I'm sure I'm going to learn an awful lot as we go through with Chris and Jeremy. Thank you for your time.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate that. And really interesting to understand a bit more how focusing on what I'm going to cornerly call the hearts and minds is an approach that needs to be thought about thoroughly and properly from the outset, which leads me very nicely into handing over to yourself, Chris, and Jeremy, for maybe a one-line introduction and then a bit of an open discussion from there. And do keep the questions firing in for those who are watching.
Well, thanks, Murray. Appreciate it. So good afternoon, everyone. Some of you I know, I've been through the list of all of you that have joined. So hello again. I think we did a couple of things like this previously with you. So like the last time, I'll host this. I head up our innovation team here at ServiceNow. I've been here 9 years, which in ServiceNow terms makes me a dinosaur. Or those that you keep track, that was the Berlin release many moons ago in 2012, as we now sort of barrel forward towards Rome later this year. But today, delighted to be joined by Jeremy from Charles River Laboratories. Hey, Jeremy.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
No worries. We're glad to have you here. So before we get going, just give everyone a little bit of a sort of sneak peek or a snippet into who you are, what you do, what your daily life sort of looks like over at CRL.
Daily life. Although,
well, today anyway.
Well, it's a strange one. So I've been at CRL about 18 months now. So I joined tail end of 2019. I worked remote when I started, so yeah, we went into this whole new world, and it was like nothing's really changed. I was working remote anyway. And as Murray kind of introduced a little bit about the company, we work with pharmaceuticals, whether they're large established or startups, to kind of accelerate drug discovery or safety. So we actually didn't have a huge switch with a lot of our core functions. They had to stay on site during the pandemic. But yeah, I mean, my daily life is spread across IT operations, so covering service desk, some of our NOC, and also our ServiceNow platform as well. So always busy, but always an opportunity to help the end user.
Brilliant. Okay, sounds cool. So we'll get into some of the sort of the minutiae and, you know, the journey to the cake, or two cakes as it may be, and hopefully our friends are going to send you another one shortly. But I guess from your point of view, when you came in about 18 months ago, sort of, you know, what did the lay of the land look like? You know, it's not always perfect, as many people paint in these sort of these sessions that get run, etc. But, you know, sort of what did you walk into? Or, you know, what was the situation that was going on? You were kind of like, right, we need to get stuck in here and start to figure out what the hell is going on.
Well, first of all, when I joined, it was under the premise that ServiceNow would be live by the time I joined. So I got to walk into like this product and yeah, it's all done. But so I came in and the project had been put on hold due to other business demands. But kind of looking at it, CRL is a really complex company. I'm sure everyone kind of says the same, but we are incredibly M&A centric. So we bring in, I think we have 3 active M&As that we've just completed, and we do a lot every year, kind of 10% growth of the company, sometimes through M&A. So very, very different operating models that we have, lots of people to change, and a lot of different ways that people are doing IT support. So we had a platform that we were using at the time. I won't name any names, but it was terrible. It was a burning platform, and we'd kind of taken it as far as we could. So it was, yeah, it's designed for smaller organizations. We'd probably customized it too much away from kind of out of the box, and we were really desperate to get onto ServiceNow. The challenge as I saw it, and I'm slightly conscious of saying this because I know some of my team is on this, but I have said it to them all before. We tried to do a lift and shift of our existing platform onto the new platform, and we had made it far too complex. We had gone far, you know, we hadn't done customization, but it wasn't simple anymore. It was kind of a continuation. So our real big focus during those early days, and I'm sure we'll go into it more, was around understanding what the user actually wants, understanding what IT actually needs, and trying to really strip it back, because actually ServiceNow knows best. Yeah, a lot of this out of the box functionality is because you've worked with a lot of customers and you've seen the trends. So, you know, some of the features are because of customer feedback. Why are we trying to undo that feedback?
Right. Yeah, and before we sort of get into the the deployment that you picked up that wasn't quite live yet, in terms of, you know, your implementation, you know, you mentioned your team there a couple of times, and I think, you know, you've just had a product owner start as well. You know, sort of when you joined, what did the team look like, and the sort of the work, if you will, and then sort of where are you now, and what do you see that looking like going forward?
Sure. So we were, I think the platform was very much being looked at as a ticketing platform. So we were doing it very light. We had Engage that was working with us during the initial phase before it stopped, and then they were our partner for go live. And then we basically had a lot of very solid kind of process individuals that had learned the platform and were doing it. So it was a mixture of vendor and then some non-specialist team members that we were asking them to do it in addition to their day job. So it was a very small set, very kind of focused, but incredibly stressful. What we're actually going to now is, you know, the realization from the business. Yeah, this is an enterprise platform. If we want to give it the right, if we want to get the right capabilities, we want to get maximum investment out of it, we need to have a proper kind of agile squad around it. So we've got our product owner that would come in. We've got a third-party company that does some of our development for us. We're looking at internal development resources. We're looking at process owners and putting all that structure around it, because we had too many people doing too many jobs. And that's when you start to cheat the process, because if you kind of know the outcome and you're developing it, you don't do a good job developing it because you're just trying to fulfill a need. So having that structure in place, the quality is increasing dramatically.
All right, that's cool. So let's sort of look at, what you inherited. It sounds like it's that sort of, the structure you're going to is great. It makes sense. Very sort of center of excellence type, structure of stakeholders, process owners, and clear lines of delineation or responsibility. And I think what you mentioned there is sort of some of the dangers that we often see where projects are tool replacement projects, and you sort of lift and shift your old world and try to create it in the new world. And you look at it and you say, well, it might look shinier or glossier, or we get a new interface, but all we've done is move our problem. So how did you start to unpick that and sort of think about it, not just, kind of Control Alt Delete, turn it off, start again, but, because you're still running, right? At that time, you've still got services that are live that you need to support. So how did you start to unpick those challenges?
Basically, we kind of went back to basics, set up a kind of omni-channel approach to go talk to our customers. So with ServiceNow, we've kind of got two distinct customers. You've got your IT customer base that are going to be transacting on the tool, and then we've got our end user base. And what we wanted to do, especially with the end user base, we went and talked to them. So we ran some focus groups, we ran some questionnaires, some one-to-one interviews. What does good IT service look like to you? What would you like in an ideal world? What are the companies that show good customer service? Because everyone loves the simplicity of Amazon, the shopping cart, and take it through. But have you ever tried to talk to Amazon support? You can't get through the 12 layers of chatbots and them trying to send you off somewhere else. So what we wanted to understand is what are the components that you really care about? We wanted to make sure that we're talking to different countries, the different departments, whether you're a salesperson versus someone that's working in the labs, because your access to tech is very different. So we worked through those, worked out what we kind of want to get to, but not for launch. Where do we want to take IT support in general, knowing that we can't do it all for day one, because we'd still be developing now. And then from the IT perspective was just understanding, what doesn't work today, what are the challenges you've got. So just so we can try and work out that path, not talking tools, not talking any specifics, because we knew that would come. The tool's the easy bit. It's that everything else that wraps around it that's difficult.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, often we talk about digital transformation, which is probably one of the most overworked phrases of the century, if not more, right? The digital bit is the technology, the platforms, lots of choices. You can do things, you can still get them wrong. The transformation part is really hard because that's people. And that's me asking you to change the way you work, or me having an opinion that there's a better way for you to do your work, right? And I think that's the danger you often get with PMOs and service management offices, that they aren't necessarily the practitioners that come tomorrow when you're live. They're the ones going to be using the products and the platforms, right? So it's kind of, it's difficult from there. So, I think, so as you went on that journey, what were some of those immediate outcomes that you saw, not just from the product, the technology standpoint, but, did people think it was better? Do they think, what, this guy who's come in, he's got a thought, he's got a plan that's working?
I think they like the direction. Firstly, there was a concern because it had been a stalled project, so everyone thought like this thing's not actually going to go live. So I think we lacked some engagement until we started to get close, and people thought, oh, hang on a minute, we're actually doing it this time. But I think directionally, I think most people got it. They understood. It kind of helps when you're using a market-leading technology that there's very little resistance on the product that we're going to. And you touched on a great point about people, we're trying to change process, and our biggest obstacle was just that IT people don't like change. No one likes change, but IT people even more. You have this well-planned process that you follow, and you've got your reports that you can easily do, and those little changes really throw people, because Charles River's a lean IT organization, like a lot of companies are now. Service expectations are going up, and as soon as you slow them down 5%, 10%, that suddenly makes your day a lot more stressful. So that was probably the biggest kind of thought that people had going through it. It's like, why, if they're happy at the moment, they didn't want it to change. They didn't see the value.
Right. Yeah. And I think, as you said, right, there was part of that you inherited an implementation or that wasn't quite live yet, and you sort of had to stop that truck a little bit, back it up, think about it again, and do some things different. I guess for me, were there things in there that you did end up taking forward, or were there things in there that you sort of said, you know what, there's a better way. All we've done is recreate the problem in a new world. Let's think again. And like you say, go back in the box. We've done this, 7,000, 8,000 times now. Why do, in the nicest sense, Charles River employees thinks they know better at doing these things than a manufacturer that is all they do, right? So it'd be interesting to understand how you sort of dealt with that, and what did you take forward, or what did you sort of go back to the drawing board on?
We kept a lot of our structure around our kind of catalogs and how they worked, because even though they were clunky and they were sort of a bit hard to navigate, people are comfortable with them. So we kind of knew that there's only so much change you can do to people. You ask them to go to a different portal, we're asking them to use search more and use sort of self-service. So we tried to stick with a lot of the kind of catalogs and flows and bits we had at the time, and really wanted to kind of build that credibility and then almost earn the right to transform. Too much on day one. It's a new tool, a new business process. We're fighting enough battles already without adding.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess within that, did you, what did you see from the IT side, right? The service providers themselves. Was it in the terms of, now that you've got more structure, you have the portals, you have the catalog and things like that. Did you find that the information that were coming into the teams was better quality, so they could resolve quicker, maybe be a bit more sympathetic or empathetic to the problems the users were having? You can say no.
No, I'm just trying to think, because there's always a struggle that so we had a lot of manually hard-coded things in the past.
Yeah.
We tried to go to more, using a logic-driven. So you choose a certain CI, it knows who the support owner is, and we started to put that in. And I think that frustrated people, because that took away some of the reporting element that we had before, because it was kind of very hard coded, had to do this, and it kind of empowered the users a little bit that they might choose the wrong thing, but it also meant that you had to have a certain amount of CI. So one of the things we had is we had this massive application list that had 2,000 applications in a different tool, and we were like, we need rid of that tool, so it's coming into ServiceNow. But then we actually had to dump a load of those applications into an Excel graveyard, because no one could tell me who the system owner was. No one could tell me who supported it. And, and we didn't know some of the critical attributes. So actually we can't bring it into operations, because who does the ticket go to? If someone says, I've got an issue with, I don't know, shells or something, just make up an application name, we can't just send it to the service desk because no one knows who does it, because the service desk can't touch it. So we probably infuriated some people through that. I think long-term people are getting better insight. I think the funniest feedback we got, because we ran some surveys, was someone said, why did you create this horrible hierarchy of request, item, task? Like, why would you do this? ServiceNow is a great platform and you've added this thing in. And we were like, no. And the only reason it was frustrating people was because we probably didn't teach them enough about reporting, about where you need to point your report at. So they were kind of seeing 3 things they needed to do, whereas actually they just had 1. So there's always, yeah, there's just that sort of fun resistance as we go through.
It's interesting, you know, that sort of classic, I want to report a certain way to sort of how amazing or wonderful my service is, which means I sort of force my end users or my customers to request in a certain way so that my reports look better, not kind of the other way, right? It's kind of designing it with the wrong outcome in mind, if you will. So if we sort of, you know, one of the questions that we've just got in from an anonymous attendee, so that's quite cool. And maybe this wasn't your choice, but it's one you inherited, right? Why had the organization chosen ServiceNow over other solutions? Was there any history to that? You know, previous, I think you said, over customized, didn't look like the product anymore. Was it unsupported, you know, not able to upgrade? Business requirements had changed, maybe?
Yeah, so the reason to move platform, like we said, is kind of we were limited in the future capabilities that we could do. It was a very unstable platform. It wasn't very intuitive, but the reason for looking at, you know, ServiceNow and competitors at the time was around where did we want to take IT operations and then the broader company, and the big target was automation. So it was, you know, starting to move into efficiency. So it wasn't just what's the best ticketing platform or, you know, how do we kind of track our work. It was the what's next. So it was very much on the roadmap that there was around automation, the chatbots, the ability to kind of, you know, everyone in IT wants to left shift. It was something that Andy said about, yeah, get it as close to the customer as possible. So, yeah, we want to be able to automate more. We want to do more self-help and chatbots and things like that. And that was where kind of ServiceNow comes into an absolute league of its own. The ability for other departments to start using it as well, I think, is, yeah. I don't know if this came in, but from an enterprise architecture perspective, that's highly advantageous for us with the different business units. So there's the flexibility for that as well.
Yeah. So, you know, you've got it, you're kind of in a good shape. You know, how did you roll it out then, right? How did you sort of educate those end users, like you were saying, but also your service providers? You know, how did you roll out? Did you just Monday morning flick the switch, big bang, here we go, everyone? Did you pick smaller groups and sort of build success and demonstrate it that way?
So we did big bang. We had a license renewal date that was fast approaching. But
that helps.
Yeah, it's the whole thing about, do you pull the sticky plaster off really quick? And we kind of decided that it's better to take the hit on one day than, you know, having some services on one than other. So,
yep.
What we started to do is, so I'm just trying to think, we went live end of October. So we kind of did a count back from that, where we started probably August time using Teams channels and email and kind of newsletters to kind of let people know it's coming. More on the IT side, we didn't really want to talk to the end users because, to be honest, the platform's pretty straightforward. People can generally learn their way around. If you start telling them months in advance, they'll forget it. So then as we went through, we kind of made sure that we were giving updates to people. We tried to do some videos. So we did some kind of engaging videos around cloning the environment, the features that are coming, just to kind of get people interested. The training approach we went with, and we would change this next time. I'm not quite sure how, but we kind of went with this funnel approach, which was generic to specific. So at the start, we kind of asked all of our fulfillers to take, there's a load of ServiceNow online, kind of self-paced, fantastic content, but we kind of said, yeah, can you go through incident, request and various bits? So that gave people a good broad understanding. Then we went into the next bit, which was more around running workshops where people would come in, we'd walk them through the processes, we'd show them the clicks and things like that, and then we had some videos that they could take away and they could watch, and we had the kind of screen overlays and bits like that. So the idea was start broad and go in. Firstly, we should have done a better job at that first stage because a lot of people are too busy, so they didn't do it. So we either needed to get people in a room to do it, which was a struggle with COVID, but yeah, we probably should have had a more structured training plan from the start. And then I think a realization is those that are close to the project find ServiceNow really easy to use, because you're in it day in, day out, you're doing UAT and you're doing these other bits. And I think you expect people to pick it up easier than they do. So one of those big learnings is probably more hand holding, more going through it, probably giving people access to a sandbox environment so they can just get really comfortable with, because it is easy once you know how to do it. Funnily enough. And then from the user perspective, like I said, we started that a bit later. So we started doing some comms, started to tell them, we picked on all the threads that had come out of the session. So they wanted it easier, they wanted it faster, and they wanted kind of language translation. And I think they were the kind of the three. I know there was a really random one. In our existing platform, you couldn't set the priority of the ticket. Everything came through as a medium. Drove people nuts because they'd write urgent in the description and it came through as medium. They're like, why doesn't the tool recognize a word? It's like, it's definitely not that clever. So what we ended up doing was kind of giving them, we had a landing page where people could go and they got the kind of short videos about it. But again, we ran a little viral video, which if anyone watches TikTok or spends too much time on there, there's like the video of where the parents see the kids exam results and they're all going crazy when there's something like really mundane going on in the other half of the screen. So we kind of had that where it was literally someone on ServiceNow going through and they showed that they could set the priority of their ticket. And then that they showed the fact that you could do language translation, so using the dynamic translations. And the people that kind of saw it really resonated with, because it was, we had listened to what they said and we had given them that functionality. So now they can raise a ticket in French, knowing that an English person can read it. So it was just tapping into those little things. And then, day one, I think it went pretty well. There's always those people that don't want to use the tool and it's a bit different. But we've changed it a lot since we went live. But it was less is more with the end users, definitely.
And a lot of those activities, really add up to that resistance to change that you see. And, very often you'll get 70-ish% that will run towards it. It's cool, it's fun, we want to be involved. You might have 20-25% that sort of wait for everybody else to go first. And then you're going to have a small group that always will be difficult for any number of different reasons. It's difficult, there could be language barriers in some cases, like you were saying. I prefer my old way of working. I don't want to use that. I want to pick up the phone, any number of different things, right? And that's a big part of that sort of business change program that comes with it as well. So in terms of sort of, how you went back in the box and this group that you now have, one of the questions we have is sort of, where's that line between what you use out of the box and then what you configure, right? Where do you how do you determine that in what you do going forward?
I think it's just being really clear about why they have to have it. So what is that justification for going outside of the box? What's the impact of if we don't? So if you stay inside, there's sort of so what. If they've got a clear justification, then it's worth looking at. We've got a really good use case at the moment around automating our data operations, and with that's being built in App Engine to make sure we've got separation. So if you do need to do it, make sure you're doing it in the right modules. You've kind of got good separation, because any of those customizations are going to hamper other people using the platform. So it's that same sort of thing. It's like, what's the business value versus the trade-off?
And that's what it is, right? At the end of the day. So, you've got lots of stuff going on with IT, which is fantastic. Have you started to step outside of IT and look at where workflow and digital things start to make more sense? Maybe replacing legacy processes, platforms, technologies, and so on?
So we've actually got a couple of non-business groups on the platform. They're kind of IT aligned. So it's kind of informatics groups and bits like that we have, but they have to follow our ITSM processes, which kind of hampers it slightly. But our kind of long-term vision is we've started talking about HR. With a large organization, different business users, M&A.
Yeah.
People don't know who to go to. So, when I started, I didn't know who to go to about time off or these kind of requests. So HR's having a look at doing a pilot for HR kind of case management, looking at our onboarding. We've had some discussions with facilities around that tracking, because there's so many people that are tracking through Excel spreadsheets or kind of smart sheets, but that power kind of comes from that central place. And what we've started to sort of feed out to people is having the kind of the CRL care center. That one portal you come to for any G&A help that you need. So, if it's, how do I get my pay slips? How do I change a supplier? How do I go book maternity leave? Any of that, or how do I get a toilet fixed? If you don't know, go there, and then that's where you can start to layer. It's probably a bad term to use when not just talked about toilets being fixed, but then you can kind of layer the AI on the front of it, so you can have the kind of chatbot trying to work out who it goes to and automate through, because with a very complex environment, everyone thinks that that's the wrong time to use kind of automation and logic, but actually it's the best time, because it takes the decision away from our support teams that says, oh, if it's a safety site in the US, it's this, if it's a French discovery site, it's this, because you can just program that in the tool, but it's harder to program a service desk person to know all the different business logic. So actually it's a great opportunity.
So in that model, the G&A that you talked about, it sounds quite a lot like shared services, global business services. Is that one consolidated service desk, or do you still have distinct for different areas?
It's very early stage conversations. It is distinct, separate groups.
Okay, so let's look a little bit forward, right? Sort of, we're here. You've got internal users that are happy, I'm going to claim, because you're here talking about it today. If not, you should be there fixing it. What does next look like for you guys? Are you on Quebec? Are you planning Rome? Sort of, what are that? You talked a little bit about HR and other things. Sort of, what does the future, let's say 6-12 months, because let's be honest, that's all we can really concentrate on at the moment. What does that start to look like for you guys?
Quebec we are halfway through testing, so we're going live mid next month with that. So very excited for some of the capabilities there. Then a lot of it is, I kind of made the comment about earn the right, and so we're really sort of focusing on showing the value of the platform as is. We've got Integration Hub and ITSM, so we're really focusing on how much can we automate, show the value. The big targets for us are move to ITSM Pro, which then brings us the kind of chatbots, the kind of prediction, the clustering, and that kind of insight that we can get to really start to left shift. On top of that, like I said, we're looking at how we can help HR. We're looking at some opportunities with customer service management. And it's really going to be those in the short to medium term. Longer, it's looking at ITOM, because I think the challenge with all these things is everything looks like an expense to IT. IT wants to install ITOM, and that's going to cost X $100,000 a year. But if we can reduce our outages by one a month or whatever it is, it's that productivity gain back to the business. And that's where we're going to see that transformation, because we're not saving IT money. We're making the company more productive, which then means sales increases. But as an upshot of that, we can help more companies, and therefore we can get more drugs approved for people, and then you can help more patients in the world.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's where we want to get to. It's kind of ultra productivity by removing the outage. that's the big value of this thing, not fixing stuff fast, stopping it happening, and really driving innovation.
And there are a lot of the sort of the KPIs and the metrics you want, right? Get out of the weeds of servers, databases, availability, whatever, right? If that means we get this to the market a year quicker or 2 years quicker in some cases with drugs and things, that's material. You can really demonstrate what that means and what it looks like, right? So I guess one of the sort of, as we just sort of, we got 2 or 3 minutes left here, sort of retrospective, right? If you could go back, maybe you don't want to, right, and have your time again, what would you do differently?
Spend more time getting people comfortable with the platform. Yeah, just making them super comfortable, happy, understanding the direction of the platform as well. That'd be the main thing. And the other one is scaling our operations, our ServiceNow team operations earlier, and having that structure in place.
So people things, right? I mean,
oh yeah. And kind of working with Engage really opened our eyes to it, because the structure that they brought in as we went through sprints and to go live, we then knew what we needed to look like once we were live. The problem is it's kind of too late to scale the resource then, but at least we then understood, you know, you need the Scrum manager, because everyone sort of talks about it, but until you actually see it, you don't realize the value. But we saw what a good Scrum manager looks like, a good developer looks like, having that kind of overarching group, and it was amazing the volume of work we could do when it's structured well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, fantastic. So they were the sort of end of the questions. There's a couple here that I think we pretty much answered. There was one other around, you know, any specific metrics that you would call out that you say, you know, you're now better this because of this percentage, or you've reduced, you know, a particular metric or service improvement by something. Is there anything that you would call out that you've gone, wow, that's made a material difference?
Not at this stage. I mean, we really kind of focused on stability and good base. I think the big change we're seeing is we've got probably 3 or 4 automations going live straight after Quebec. And with that, I mean, I think we were looking at $180,000 to $190,000 a year in savings around not having to touch the request to change a distribution list or security group automation and things like that. That's where that scale comes from. So they're going to be the really important ones we track going forward. It's how do we avoid adding staff, because we're very lean, we're not going to reduce, but that pays for some of the platform on its own. So they're huge metrics for us.
Brilliant. All right, well, thank you, Jeremy. We're at time, so appreciate you sharing your insights and obviously everything that's going on there. And sounds like huge success, more to come. Good luck with the Quebec upgrade. I'm sure it'll go swimmingly well. If not, you know how to get hold of me. But I will hand you back to our host, Murray.
Hello, thank you, and thank you both. And I can say I've sat with Jeremy through this journey, and I have seen his comical memes and videos that he's produced for his team. And I do think humour is a great part to bring in when you're looking at transformation and when you're looking at changing the people teams and that sort of hearts and mind approach. I have to say it was a very successful way, in a slightly different way, in a very Jeremy caricature of how we can engage them, right? How can we pull in our IT staff, our wider end users into getting into it? I also know we did other stuff along the way with some ServiceNow goodies promised and stuff like that for the wider team to help tie them in. So this was a very interesting route. For those of you interested, the journey of the cake did happen, and there is the cake. Which is always very exciting, ordering a cake in the middle of COVID to be delivered to an office, but only 2 people can be in the office and everybody else is online. But it was an exciting journey nonetheless. So we got there, we went live, and it's been an exciting period since as well. There are a few more questions that I'll just rattle off at the end here, but while we're going through that, if anybody else has any more or any other thoughts coming in, please do let me know. One of the ones I have in front of me is, have you looked at or do you intend to bringing in and connecting other functions of the process and ServiceNow together where synergies exist? For example, onboarding, offboarding in HR and facilities, so beyond the basic incident management features which we've touched on a bit, but do you want to give in a bit more detail on that? And actually, I'll join two questions together because it suits quite nicely, Jeremy, in terms of another question is, have you looked at centralizing a help desk, i.e. IT, procurement, let's assume facilities in this, into one employee service center, as we use it in ServiceNow terminology, or do you intend on keeping them sort of separate?
From the onboarding, yes, we're definitely looking at that. It's a key area of focus, yeah, as we kind of scale. So we do want to look at how we have that end-to-end stream of bringing people in, and so that is a key area of focus for us, and one of the reasons why we're having these discussions. From considered the central help desk, it would be an amazing concept. It would be challenging from our organizational structure, and I'm not the CEO, so I'd have to defer to him on that directionally. However, if anyone has the opportunity to do it, I think there would be an amazing benefit just from having that kind of front end person that can triage just that simple question: is what ServiceNow has, how can I help? And then it's dispatching it, whether it's a chatbot or anything, to the relevant group. So yeah, huge benefit if you can get your organization to do it.
Absolutely, agreed. I think that's relatively it for the questions, unless anybody else has any that they want to quickly type as I briefly summarize.
Just before you summarize, just a quick question, Jeremy. I notice Charles River, you're a global operation. Do you have any feedback on how people from different countries and cultures have embraced the technology in maybe different ways, or have shown different preferences as to how they want to use it? I
don't know if it's from a country perspective on how people want to use it. There's definitely a trend that in France people like using the telephone. And some of the other locations kind of want to use the portal. They don't want to talk to anyone. We actually turned off the ability to raise a ticket via email, which caused a little bit of friction. But I think some of it's a generational thing and a departmental thing. Yeah, a lot of the younger teams or the more tech savvy teams want to be able to use an app to raise a ticket, whereas some people want to talk to someone and kind of talk through their problem. The challenge we have is we have a lot of lab technicians and lab workers. You can't raise a ticket and wait for the service desk to ring you back, because you need to go back in and work on your experiment. So a lot of it was, how do we wrap around their business process? So I think that was one. And I think the biggest challenge we also had was we're trying to ask people to use it in natural language. And yes, the translation stuff works. I think what you need to do is spend some time on the portal to understand, just because it's translated, do the words make sense? Because help and request and incident mean kind of different things in different contexts in different countries. So kind of be ready to change the wording to suit your customers, so that they really understand. We have a lot of people saying, I don't know if it's an incident or a request because I'm requesting help. So just kind of play on those words. But having said that, that kind of works across the English language as well. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And a good end. And I know as part of that, language was a key sort of win for us as we went live with ServiceNow as a key factor to start spreading that globally, because there was plenty of excitement with that. So thank you all. I guess to summarize, it's been quite an interesting discussion, actually, firing back and forth in terms of a lot of what we've focused about, I think, is around the people, right? It's the people of the organization, it's the organizational change. So as Chris alluded to at the start, that digital transformation, the transformation is the people, right? The digital just helps us along that route. So I guess how to improve and overcome internal barriers to change. I mean, we covered that in great detail. It's really interesting to see how we're looking at it, not only from a perspective of what went right, but what we do better, right? How we might improve that in the future. And frankly, how we bring a little bit of comedy in as well, which I always enjoy. The lessons learned from legacy to a new solution, I think, has also been interesting, right? It's that keeping to the out of the box. It's if we're going to go forwards with a Ferrari, let's treat it like a Ferrari. Let's not put the engine of a Lunda in there or something like that. So it's quite interesting to see how we get that back to basics and how we drive into the solution that's going to fit the business long term, not re-implementing old sort of processes. And finally, I guess embracing that cultural change when implementing, and how we're spreading that around the organization, how we, to quote you, Jeremy, pulling that funnel in, getting as many people, as much visibility as possible, and trying to make sure that we embrace this organizational tool wider and bigger. So all been very interesting aspects for me, I guess, and a great little summary to finish, in my view. So finally, and a few minutes early, which is always good to see, just like to do a massive thank you really to our panelists today. So Andy, appreciate your start, interesting question at the end there. Jeremy, Chris, for taking time out your day and having a fruitful, open discussion really in terms of what's gone on in your organizations and how you can see sort of change coming in the future and what also that future looks like. So I really appreciate all your time, and of course, thank you all for attending. And we keep running events like this on the basis there's lots of people who attend and everyone seems to be interested. So if there is feedback, please do pass it on, as I'm sure we'll run another event in the near future. Any questions, do reach out to Meg, but we'll also follow up with a recording and any collateral.